Hi, I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack Recruitment, and welcome to the Low Code Podcast, where we're dedicated to increasing awareness and appreciation of the power of low code. In this podcast, we'll hear from developers about their career journeys and how low code has enabled them to achieve new levels of success and innovation. So let's go. Hi, Miguel. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, Feroz. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not so bad. I mean, the weather could be a little bit better in the Netherlands, but that's normally always the case.
Yes, we're the same. Yeah, we're sharing the rain and the wind.
Yes, people that from the south of Europe, they don't know how good they have it compared to us Northern Europeans.
Exactly. I want to start by saying thank you for agreeing to take part. You know, you're someone I've followed since we started as a business. You guys founded pretty much same time as us, so I've seen Product League around, and you're someone who people have mentioned in the past on the podcast as part of their journey. So I thought it made
Hopefully in good
sense.
terms, not bad
Yes, very
terms.
good terms. Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So that's why I thought it'd be really good to obviously speak to you. So thank you for taking the time to be a guest.
No, thank you for having me, and I apologize because it took us a while to actually
Took a while,
line
yeah,
up
but
our.
we're here.
Yeah, I know, we're here in the end, so
We're
great
here,
to join you.
and I think I said to you, obviously we met in Denver at the Next Step One
Yes, for the
conference.
people who are listening, we actually met like in real life
Yes,
4 weeks ago, right?
yes, 2 weeks ago. And I think I said to you at the time, you'll be the first guest that I've met in person prior to recording, which
All
is
right, okay.
which
I
is a
feel
first. So
extra special then.
yes, exactly, yeah.
Let's see if I can honor that privileged opportunity.
Yeah. So yeah, it'd be good to kind of, I thought it'd be best for you to give your kind of own introduction, tell us about yourself, your background, and then we can get going from there.
All right, okay. So okay, let's start. I'm Miguel. I'm originally from Portugal, as I mentioned.
Yep.
Now living in the Netherlands for 6 years. Always been a software engineer by heart. From the ripe old age of 11, I knew
Yeah.
what I wanted to do.
Wow.
And yeah, because the first time I set eyes on a personal computer at the time, 82, 83, I said like, this is it, and I
Yeah.
just pursued it. So I studied software engineering. Was really what you would call a hardcore software engineer. So not a software related data guy, but more really a guy who absolutely
Yeah.
loved coding.
Yeah.
I actually loved really low level coding.
Okay.
To the point that my heart was actually in games development.
Yeah.
So when I finished my university, I moved to the UK, where I worked as a games developer for 5 years for EA and for Sony and other
Yeah.
companies. Then moved back to Portugal, and shortly after joined this crazy small startup company that wanted to create a platform for easy development and easy
Yeah.
mutability of applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know if anything was going to come out of that. It was 2001, and that company turned out to be OutSystems. That
Yeah.
is the opportunity that leads us to be talking today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 15 years at OutSystems. Yeah, I don't know if you want to then go into a few details until I decided, okay, let's shake things up a little bit. I'm
Yeah.
not getting any younger.
Yeah.
What's the craziest thing I can do? It's we move countries yet again.
Yeah.
And indeed, I moved to the Netherlands, as mentioned, 6 years ago.
Yeah. And co-founded Product League.
Product League, yes,
Yep.
that is indeed correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so kind of, yeah, so going back and now drilling down into that. So obviously when you graduated, in university and things like that, was your kind of interest already gaming as well, or was that kind of an opportunity that came up at the time and you thought, okay, let's roll with it?
No, I actually, from very early age, I associated a lot of the software development challenge with visual software
Yeah.
development. So I always was very keen on things to do with like image rendering, 3D rendering, all sorts of things. And I also really liked interactive systems, more than, you know, batch processing systems or stuff like that, more back-endy systems. So this always, and I'm making this sound like super highbrow, and yeah, but and I also like to game, because as a kid I like to game, right?
Of
So I
course.
thought I would combine both passions. So from the teenage years, I always, you know, mostly what I coded was games. So it was already kind of, my heart was in it to actually pursue it as a career. But you know, in the 90s there was no game development indie companies, and I thought, like, if I want to really do this for a living, I need to move somewhere else, and hence going to the UK in '95.
And you know, how did that kind of come across? Did you relocate first and then apply for jobs, or because obviously back then wasn't like just easy as applying on LinkedIn, right?
No,
So,
no,
you know,
not at
so
all.
so how was
No,
that
no.
process really?
No, I'm way too structured to do something like this. No, no, I really, you know, I had this cunning plan
Yeah,
to actually do it. So I actually did the last semester of university already in the UK, albeit
nice,
in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, at
nice.
the tail end of the Troubles. So that
Yeah,
was also
yeah.
interesting. And while I was doing this final essay, yeah, I applied to companies in the
Uh,
UK, and I got, I think, a couple of offers, you know,
mm,
Codemasters and EA, and
mm,
basically then I went back home, handed
yeah,
in my essay, you know,
yeah,
closed up
yeah.
the course, and then flew out to the UK, already with a job in the games industry.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because I was interested to see kind of what made you kind of move over, but it's good that you got to come here and kind of finish
Yep.
your exams and things like that.
Yep.
And you know, you obviously, you know, fast forward to obviously 2001. You know, you've been in the gaming side of things. Then you come across OutSystems. How did that kind of come about?
Yeah, it is a peculiar story, because I was I remember, you know, I was at home and my phone rings. Okay, and obviously you need to remember that, you know, I left university, immediately went to a different
Mm,
country, so I didn't really have too many contacts. And on the other
yeah.
side of the phone was someone sort of said, "Yeah, are you Miguel? Would you like to come in for an interview?" And I said, "But who are you calling from?" "Oh, it's a startup called OutSystems." Obviously, I'd never heard
Mm.
about it. I said, "Well, let's have, yeah, I should, yeah, let's hear
Let's
what you
have a
guys
chat.
have to
Yeah.
say." And I was very open to what I was saying. It was actually not too far away from where I was living, so that was
Okay.
excellent
Cool.
for
Yeah.
me.
Convenient. Yeah.
Exactly. As it turned out, you know, the person who was ringing me is Carlos Alves, which is
Ah.
the
Yeah.
current CEO
Yep.
of OutSystems, and has been
Yeah.
in many very important roles still to this day at
Mm,
OutSystems. Yeah, so it was this. Yeah, I don't know. I think they got my CV from someone in their
mm.
connection. To this
Yeah.
day, it
Yeah.
remains unknown how they reached me.
Wow.
But what I did find is, when I went there, and I think there was literally only 4 people in the office. I ended up, you know, when I started being employee number 6, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, and what attracted me was, first of all, they were building a product, and you know,
Mm,
historically, I always been a product kind of
yeah.
person more than a services, so that was a plus point. And also at the time, the only thing that really existed was Service Studio, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And by existing, it was a limited feature, but if you looked at it, you would recognize the current Service Studio as
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, it is the same software." Um, and again, what I saw is, I saw a tool for development that was highly visual, and that had to do, you know, with dragging and dropping. And I felt, you know, this is actually something that I could sink my teeth into, and kind
Yeah.
of scratch the itch of interactive software creation.
Mm, mm,
So it was kind of the combination of these things. It's like a product thing, and something that has this visual development,
mm.
which was very attractive. Yeah, so I just said, well, let's try it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
indeed, yeah, I stayed there for
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
very happy years.
Yeah. And you know, you said obviously you were someone who was prior to that really into your coding, right?
Mhm.
So, and then to go from that to that, even though you were kind of like, oh yeah, this looks really interesting. How was the transition for you, for someone who went from hardcore kind of coding and really enjoying it to
Mhm.
not so much?
Well, there's a bit of a nuance here because obviously the first 9 years that I was at OutSystems, I was actually working in the product. So code-wise, the challenge was still
Yeah,
high code,
sure. Yeah,
right? The
yeah,
product, the platform
yeah,
is written in high code.
yes,
And to be honest, when you're a games programmer, especially an old style games programmer,
yeah,
you really are hell bent on, the act of coding being in and of itself something that you totally want to do, and then it
yeah,
inflames you. So I was the most devout high coder there was, right? So herein, well, sometimes when I talk about now low code, I do believe that I have the past history to have a balanced view
mm,
because I wasn't born into low code, right?
yes, yes,
So I think it does give you a little bit of a perspective of the decisions that you can make and
mm,
what are the trade-offs, and then you're qualified to decide, am I in it for the challenge of writing code, or am I in the challenge of solving a problem? And I
mm,
think the users of low code platforms, so the developers on top of low code platforms, they need to choose between this tension, as it were.
yeah, yeah. And then obviously, yeah, you were working on the product, and is it from there you then moved on to community manager within
Yes, correct.
OutSystems?
So after 9 years, and as I said, 9 years. Let me try to do the maths here. So by that time, I was maybe around like 30 something. And if you remember that I mentioned I started coding at 11, so I already
Yes.
had a good like 20
Yeah,
something
yeah,
years of just straight coding.
yeah.
And indeed, my mind, and this is, as you get older, you realize, and you need to start to acknowledge that your interests kind of
Mm,
shift, and actually your strengths also kind of shift.
yes.
And I felt like, okay, this is a really great platform, but I actually know very little about what is the life of people that use this platform.
Mm,
By
mm.
the time I think we were up to version 6 or 7 of OutSystems.
Okay, yeah,
So, we developed quite a lot of what is OutSystems as you see
sure.
it now. And I thought, like, let me try to interact with the people who use it. And it
Mm,
was, and the opportunity arose to be community manager of
yeah.
OutSystems for a period. And I thought it was very rewarding because I was confronted with all the bad decisions that
Yeah,
maybe we as engineers had done
yeah,
when I actually sat across the people who were using it
yeah,
and say, why the heck are you doing it like this when
yeah,
we actually use it like this?
yeah.
And I think it was a very interesting because it helped me build up a degree of humility about
Mm,
yourself as a developer,
mm,
and trying to do it a little bit better in the future and not be in such a like a closed
yeah,
sounding box,
yeah,
and actually reach out to the people who use it, which is
yeah,
something
yeah.
that nowadays is very, very obvious,
Mm,
but it wasn't always obvious for software developers
yeah,
across history.
yeah. And when you obviously started this role and obviously grew in the role, um, obviously our systems developers are everywhere at the
Yeah.
moment. At that time, what
What
was the
did it
main?
look like?
I'm guessing, yeah. What did it look like? I'm guessing it was pretty much majority Portugal.
Yeah, well, there was the majority. So okay, so there was a good number of people in Portugal, obviously,
Mm,
because that's the
mm,
origin of the technology.
yeah,
But you already had a very strong contingent, for example, in the Netherlands,
yeah,
which for historical reasons has been always a very vibrant, or I would say innovative
mm,
market for
yeah,
technology in general,
yes,
and for OutSystems as well. So I remember that you had like a big cluster of Portuguese people. You had a very how should I say, recognizable cluster and very
mm,
vocal cluster
yeah,
of Dutch people. And you had like sprinkling of people here, already the US was taking a form a little bit, not so much the Asia Pacific. I mean, there were
mm,
like, obviously you
yeah,
would always have champions everywhere, but I think the critical mass at the time was very much in Europe, and very much in these kind of two countries.
yeah. And did you find were you mainly communicating with existing developers, or were you initiating plans to convince other traditional developers to learn low code, learn out systems?
So my focus at the time, and sometimes, you know, in hindsight, maybe I could have balanced it a little bit more, but my at the time was kind of fostering the ingenuity of the people who were around.
Yeah.
Because it was the time where the Forge was actually created, and we
Mhm.
wanted, you know, things in the Forge. We
Yeah.
wanted kind of people in the forums replying to the newcomers. So
Yeah.
it was, I was not so much growth hacking as
Mhm.
I was nurturing the people who were around. Okay.
Sure.
Um, Obviously, at that time there was a slight, well, increase in the interest of OutSystems to reach other markets, and then, you know, I think the person that followed me was more focused, for example, in going after and letting the community itself be more self-sufficient, so the
Sure.
point connections being
Yeah.
more self-sufficient. But it was a very, very interesting time, because indeed was the moment where OutSystems really wanted to become less of a, you know, a niche and more
Mm.
like widespread. And then you needed to have all sorts of crazy ideas to find people in other in
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you moved it, so you got here technology education expert. Well, so was that because other people in the past have said back in the day you were doing some training boot camps and things like that. Is that what this role was
Yes,
involved?
that was so my last stretch at OutSystems, which was like maybe 3.5, 4
Yeah.
years long, was indeed in the training department. So this was around the time where we were starting to work on version 10 of the platform.
Okay.
So all the training materials up until 9 had a certain format, which was more of a, you would have someone voicing over as they were assembling an application
Mm.
and explaining the concepts as they went along. And we felt, okay, this is sometimes not the best way to consume knowledge, because some people like to have like a book. They
Yeah.
want to read something offline. They
Follow the
want to.
guideline. Yeah.
So we kind of needed to turn the format around, even if the teaching content was actually very sound and applicable. So there was a challenge there, like, okay, how do we make this be more versatile, the content? So, and at the time, version 10 was also when the first mobile version was released. So there were a lot of moving parts. We wanted to change a little bit how we taught things, and we also needed to teach, you know, kind of mobile development at the same
Mhm.
time, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very, very interesting challenge. So part of my occupation was coming up with the syllabus of the course. You know, how do you teach this? What are the
Mhm.
chapters? How do you introduce this concept over here without, you know, without it breaking the flow of what you're learning?
Mhm.
So a lot of the times, you know, I had to move chapters about and rewrite things, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of obsessive for these kind of things. So you know,
Yeah.
I would be driven crazy, but at the same time, very very happy.
Yeah.
So that was one part. But the other one also uh, flew. Kind of segued from my experience as a community manager, which is I really like to teach. I like to
Mm.
sit in front of people and, you know, see it in their eyes when the eyes light up, and you know, this guy got it right, or this
Yeah.
girl got
Yeah. Yeah.
it right.
Yeah.
It's super rewarding for people who like to teach as I did. So I also did that quite a lot. So not only was I, you know, writing the stuff, but I was actually teaching
Yeah.
OutSystems, and I think I taught OutSystems in like 12 different countries.
Wow.
And it was a very rewarding few years where we produced a lot of things. I got to know a lot of people from many regions.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think it was a good, as we say it in Portuguese, you close it with a golden key.
Yeah.
My
Yeah. Sure.
my tenure
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
OutSystems.
And I think, the way you speak about it kind of fits into, like I said, a lot of people I've spoken to have mentioned your name as part of their journey. Killian mentioned your name,
Okay,
where
yeah, good,
he
yeah,
he he attended your he heard you were good doing a training, and he was
yeah.
working with Mendex and he was really keen to join. So, I think, it's good to kind of see, like, your passion of training really left the mark on people who now have very successful careers with the
Yeah.
platform.
And this when you're a teacher, I think this is really the best thing you can have, is
Yeah.
really knowing that, you know, people, you know, it clicks, and in somehow it, you know, expands the way they look at the world or the possibilities that they have for a career, and they go on to do like really great things and
Yeah.
awesome things. And Killian is one such example. There
Yeah.
are others, and I feel super humbled
Yeah.
to have been, or to believe that in some shape or form I was able to contribute
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
to their path.
Yeah. And I could imagine by then, even though you said you were working on the product, so you were still kind of in the coding side, you're invested in low code. You decided that's the kind of journey you were gonna, because obviously you decided to leave OutSystems.
Mm-hmm.
And you by then you were kind of invested in, you're gonna continue going in the low code direction.
Correct.
So how did that come about?
Yeah, it was a little bit of a blended experience because you have when I was in the training department for a period. The training department was actually part of the experts group at
Mm,
OutSystems for an initial period. So this was actually my first opportunity where I actually delivered services to customers, right?
yeah,
And I found it quite how should I say, quite surprising how the dynamics are different,
yeah,
of building a product according to specs, of designing it, having, a more limited number of people who contribute to the idea, sometimes having a little bit more time to do
mm,
so, being able to manage a little bit the scope
mm,
more within the family, as it were.
yes,
While when you're customer facing, a lot of the times, there's time constraints which are a lot more prevalent.
yeah.
uh, the person across the table a lot of the times, yeah, wants slightly different things than you
They're
want,
never
and
happy.
a lot of
Yeah,
negotiating that needs, so everyone leaves the table feeling they kind of got a good compromise.
yeah,
So little by little, I went out a little bit of my shell of pure developer to a person who wanted to solve problems for people, right?
mhm,
And part of it was community management, part of it was
mhm,
teaching, and this kind of pushes you a little bit towards implementing stuff that interacts with end clients,
mhm,
or clients, let's put it this way. So I was already in the frame of mind of saying, yeah, this could be a possibility. I would like to try this a little bit further because it also has more of a, how should I say, human component of
yes,
negotiating, of
yeah, yeah,
understanding what are the value proposition for this particular person you're trying to create a software for. And again, the age also plays a little bit of a card here, because your interests blossom, and some of them, diminish, some of them blossom. And I would say, like, to everyone who at any point in their careers, like, listen to where your heart is at the moment, because the person you were at 11 or at
yes,
18 or 23 when you got
yeah,
out of university might not be the person that you are at 40. Very
yeah,
likely it isn't. But what you need to do is you need to keep chasing that dream, and don't crystallize. Otherwise, you
yeah,
bore yourself to death and you're not
yeah,
going to be a good professional. So indeed, I was at that point where, let me try a little bit something out. But on that framework of interacting with clients and being challenged with interesting projects, came the combination of, okay, can I do this from inside out systems? And really, by that time I was, well, for lack of a better word, typecast as the kind of geeky guy, right?
yeah,
Okay,
okay,
it is what it is, because it's people know you. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and at the same time, I went like, okay, is Portugal the place where I can move the needle more, right?
mm,
Or you can make a dent or contribution to this vision more. And then I felt, yeah, maybe not, right? And this is what brought me to consider other places. I had a short
mm.
list that included Singapore, Japan, but then I thought, oh,
Nice,
crazy time zone differences from family. And
yeah,
also
yeah,
at the top of the list was the Netherlands, which I visited very often for both community management.
yeah, sure,
So I ended up going for the Netherlands because, as I said, a lot of stuff as was happening and is still happening in the Netherlands in
mm,
terms of opportunities, projects.
yeah,
The Dutch are by nature very innovative. They will try
mm,
stuff out. The economics also make it easier for people to be a little bit more entrepreneurial.
Yes.
So this was kind of the combination where I said, okay, Netherlands probably is a good possibility, and maybe I will need to, in the interest, in my own interest, and actually by association, maybe in the interest of OutSystems as well, move out of OutSystems
Yeah.
and the person who thinks from the outside of OutSystems.
Sure.
So this is kind of the justification for going to the Netherlands and for leaving OutSystems. So it was, my heart, was kind of broken the day
Yeah. I
I
could
left.
imagine. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
could
and
imagine.
to this day I have dozens of friends there that I
Mm.
very much cherish.
Yeah.
And yeah, but I actually think I'm probably helping the
Yeah.
ecosystem and the vision more from the outside
Yeah.
than would if I'd remained at
Yeah.
OutSystems.
Yeah. And how was obviously when you because obviously you didn't start Product League straight away,
No.
right? So you started working for, was it a partner or?
Yes, correct. It
Yeah.
was at the time it was called Time Series. Now, Time
Okay.
Series is, and I know that obviously in this podcast you talk about other flavors of low
Yes.
code, etc. So
Yes.
this is actually a nice point. So Time Series was historically a great Mendix
Okay.
partner. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a great Mendix partner, and they were starting the practice. They wanted to start the practice of OutSystem. They had a couple of
Okay.
people already, but they wanted to grow it a little bit. So I joined first as a technical specialist, and then I
Mm.
moved to be the business line manager for OutSystems. Now we built a fairly good group over that 1 year and 3 months or something
Mm.
that I was at Time Series, but the problem was that the footprint of the Mendix group was really big,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and I would say very justifiable because they had the most awesome Mendix people you
Yeah.
could find in the market, right? Great colleagues there, but a lot of the marketing effort, the focus
Yeah.
had to go to your main
Yeah.
business line, right? Which
Yeah.
was Mendix. And I felt a little bit like, okay, maybe I cannot make such a big impact within this framework
Yeah.
by virtue of all of these constraints. And this is why I was kind of triggered to
Mm.
maybe try setting something up,
Mm.
uh, and actually have my first experience as an entrepreneur
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
5 years ago by
Yeah.
co-founding a product league.
And how kind of, just from my personal experience, I thought about iTrack, for example, 2 years before it happened.
Okay.
So how long was that process for you to kind of from, okay, this is something I want to do? Was it that opportunity that made you think, actually, now I want to do it? Or is it something you had in your mind for a while that eventually I would like to do my own thing?
Okay. So unlike my move to the games industry, this was a lot more opportunistic, and
Okay.
it's interesting. I actually became a lot less risk adverse in the old age than I
Yeah.
was as a
Okay.
young person. So it can go
Yeah.
both ways
Yeah.
in your life. And I was kind of thinking, okay, I'm not able to achieve here what I would like, and some of it was outside of me to
Mm.
change to and I realized there were a couple of other people that I happened to be interacting with as some of them competitors even,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that I noticed there was frustration on their sides as well in
Yeah.
their current assignments. So it was a little bit the convergence of at the time there was four of us. We all sort of said, you know what, if we bring our own views, and we were quite complementary on how we looked at the problem.
Yeah.
One person was more like the project managery person, one person was more like product ownership person, one
Mm.
was more salesy person, one was more like the techie
But all different skills
guy.
to
Yeah,
for a startup, which is
for a
perfect.
startup, which is
Yeah.
very interesting. And
Yeah.
indeed we decided to set up by virtue of just talking and realizing we
Yeah.
had shared frustrations.
Yeah.
And it was quite fast actually when that came to be
Yeah.
indeed.
Yeah. And then Product League was born.
It was born indeed
Yeah.
March
Yeah.
2018.
And how did you obviously because it's a very different kind of company name. How did that kind
Yes.
of how did you come to that name?
Yeah, because I remember vividly. We were in a restaurant which is not that far away from actually where I'm calling now,
Yeah.
and we were throwing about what is it, what do we want to achieve with the company, how do we convey what we want to achieve with the company, and we threw around crazy names like rainbow colors of IT or something.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
heard it here first. I
yeah,
don't think
yeah.
anyone outside of that group would probably
Okay.
had a clue by that time. And
Yeah.
so the thing was, we sort of said, okay, one thing that we believe is we would like to do and bring it that's a little bit different to the average partner. Certainly at the time, I think the view on the world has moved a little bit. Was we do believe that value to the customer is not solely delivered by having great developers. Yes,
Mhm.
you need great developers, but actually, making sure that you create the right things is paramount, right?
Yeah.
Because you can code 10 times as fast the wrong thing and you still don't need
Yes.
it, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what we were discussing is like, but a lot of the times the clients, although they believe they're very mature in the IT world, they are not really actually.
Mhm.
So you cannot like just shift left to them the responsibility of figuring out what's going to bring value, what it is that they really need in their course of business, because a lot of times you get what they want, you get vocalized what they want,
Yeah.
and they're working a lot of times as an increment to what they have, right? Henry Ford is known to have said, like, if I'd given people what they wanted, I would give them faster horses. So
Yes.
he did the
Yeah.
car, right? And so we sort of said, okay, so there needs to be this um, connection of multidisciplines to actually bring about the best product possible. And this for me was very, very, and I was also a very vocal part on this discussion because I came from games development, and games are
Yes.
built from with 3D artists, texture artists, producers,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
designers, front-end programmers, back-end programmers.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, for me, this was self-apparent.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, why do we believe that enterprise software kind of only requires programmers, right?
Mm.
So the product league was predicated on this idea that you need to bring about several people to create a wholesome product,
Mm.
something that really works and does what it's meant to do. And you need all these touch points to collect the best information possible to produce the best product possible. And that's why it was captured that. The league
Yeah.
was just like, okay,
Yeah. It's,
Justice League. Well,
yeah.
it will
Yeah. Yeah. It's
it
cool.
will be
Yeah.
Product League.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
how it ended up.
Yeah. I thought it's quite a cool company name. Definitely. That's why I had to ask the question. And do you want to, obviously tell us about Product League, the services, everything kind of the company does and focuses on?
Right. Okay. So let me start by stating what is the mission and
Mm.
of Product League, because a lot of the times what I observe is you go about building your company without really a mission, without like an underlying proposition that should be beyond what you're going to do tomorrow, right? So actually the full mission of OutSystems, of Product League,
Mm.
is to make companies future-proof by optimizing and digitalizing their core processes in evergreen digital products. So unpacking this is why do we exist? First of all, it is to make companies future-proof, the clients future-proof. This is the baseline of
Mm.
why we exist. Now, when you move from the why to the how, you go like, what we do is we first look at your core processes and we optimize those core processes. And then we digitalize them. And only here in the mission do you actually see some reference at kind of software, right?
Mm.
Because really, I think if your mission is to write software, you're starting at the wrong place.
Mm.
Your mission needs to be to solve a problem that's never solvable. Otherwise, it is not the vision, it's not the mission, it is your job for tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And then what is it that we deliver? So we got the why do we exist, the how we do it, what is it that we deliver? We deliver digital products, but that need to remain relevant, hence the word evergreen, which gets all sorts of jokes when you're not a English native speaker. People go, what evergreen, whatever. So I never hear the hand of it for that particular word. So there you go. So this is what we set out to do, and to accomplish this, we indeed need to have these multidisciplinary people. So our baseline offer is one of, we discuss with the client, we realize what is the IT maturity, where is it that we need to meet them to actually then take their wants into something that is tangible. So we basically create multidisciplinary teams that can have product owners, that can have business analysts, that can have UXers, that can have obviously low-code developers, that can have QA people to actually bring about these products, these digital products. We complement this by sort of saying, okay, the evergreen means that you need to stick around to, whenever something changes, maybe laws change, product needs to change, or the market changes and you need to adapt the product. And there's nothing magical about software built with low code. If you let it rust, it becomes tomorrow's legacy. So you need to, the price of relevance is eternal vigilance, as they say. Sorry for bastardizing a little bit the saying, but indeed that's how. And what we do is, okay, Mr. Customer, we're with you for the development, and we're with you for the life cycle of it. So we also have managed services offer that carries your software through, even when you no longer have a dedicated team to actively develop it for evolutionary maintenance. Obviously, a lot of the times when you land, you need to figure out tricky stuff in regards to the landscape or dependencies and whatnot. So we also have expert services that are brought about to unpack these conundrums that you might find, so that indeed the teams can then build on something that's well informed.
And
so
are you
in a nutshell?
Yeah, and are you focused on certain domains and regions, or kind of open?
So we started with no real opinion about like what is the vertical that best serves us. We said like, okay, we are opinionated enough on how we should deliver the product. Let's see what this resonates with most. But over the years, we seem to have accrued quite a bit of an association with the retail side of things. So we have quite a few retail clients. And then kind of word of mouth between them, like they liked OutSystems and they liked League, and they suggest to the other CIO from the other same group. So a lot of the time retail, and in the last year we've been heavily investing in the e-commerce side of things, actually creating our first platform product that's built in OutSystems for the main part of it, for the workflows, but actually composes the best in breed other technologies that are associated with e-commerce, like content management systems, product information management, all those technologies which the bleeding edge are headless, so they have no UI. And basically what you do is you get these technologies which are very cloud native because they're quite modern, and you stick on top of it OutSystems, which builds just the perfect solution out of this combination. So again, e-commerce is very related to retail. So again, we're in the retail domain, even on that angle.
And being in the Netherlands, and obviously, especially since prior to you starting Product League, you worked for a company that Mendex Focus thought about OutSystems. Have you, as a founder, thought about, okay, we're in the Netherlands, it's also a big Mendex market, of something to maybe consider to offer both down the future? Or is that something that's crossed through your mind, being in the country where Mendex is kind of very established as well?
So you're not doing your job if those things don't cross your mind. You need to weigh the pros and cons, and a lot of the times, for example, and I have a lot of respect for Mendex, if nothing else, by virtue of having worked with some of the guys. By the way, Time Series ended up being acquired by Mendex itself.
Wow.
After a while. So that was complete proof that they were like awesome people.
Doing great, yeah.
And I think you kind of need to pick, yeah, you need to pick your fights, and you need to kind of have a focus, right?
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have complementary technologies that add up to a certain area, or a certain offer that you're very, that you embody. It's another thing to be too distracted with conflicting technologies that more or less address the same kind of problems, right?
Sure.
So I would say, I don't necessarily think that product lead needs to be a solely an OutSystems technology. We have ambitions to go on other ones and technologies, but they need to offer, I believe they need to offer a differentiator to what we have currently.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's basically how I look at it. But never say never.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of the time, I'm a pragmatic, and I also coming from the high code sort of thing, I think you should use the right tools for the job. If the only tool that you have or the mindset you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you should have this wonderment of sort of saying, is this really the best technology to do it? And then you seek what is the best technology to solve a sub problem. And if it is something that's in your domain, by all means, embrace it. If the delta to get there is small or appreciably small, maybe you can try out to diversify. If not, you just turn to the client, sort of say, well, I think you're best served by something that I really cannot contribute with.
Yeah.
And I think actually this candor, it gives you a positive opinion. Well, the clients will get a positive opinion if you sort of say, this thing you should actually seek with another technology. And then, I'll integrate with it and I'll use it, but build this particular thing in another technology or with another supplier that is an expert on that technology. And then everyone wins.
Yeah, of course. And, you're obviously celebrating 5 years of Product League.
We have already, yes.
You have, sorry, yes. So you've done 5 years.
Yeah,
so, it's in that 5 years, so you're an OutSystems partner as well. So in the 5 years, obviously, as a, I'd say still young company, because I call us a young company. What would you say are some of kind of, obviously you've been through a pandemic and things like that. What's some challenges you faced in the 5 years from the beginning till now? That would be kind of,
interesting for other
to hear.
Yeah. Well, okay, so the pandemic is like a major, wrench thrown to the universe, right? So it's hard to understand, some of the challenges, if they're like intrinsic to all scenarios or if they're just very specific to the pandemic. And what I did find, for example, is communication between people, and I don't want to go into the whole discussion of remote work, exclusively hybrid, back to the offices and all sorts of things. But I do believe that humans are humans, and a lot of our energy is drawn from interactions with other people. Some of them, pragmatic interactions that are geared towards, let's solve this problem. Some of them are kind of off the cuff. We go and grab a coffee. I ask about kids, you ask about mine, but we create a multi, how should I say, a multi-dimensional view of our colleagues. Let's put it this way. And this allows us to not only know how or have a hint of how they can help on problems that are not the one we're currently solving, because saying, oh, this guy has got an interest on this, and maybe one day you're trying to solve a problem on this, and you go like, I never spoke with Feroz like formally about this, but I remember him mentioning that he's like a keen blah. I'll go. So that is one thing, and the other is, I think we need to have a little bit of grace towards each other. We'll always let each other down at some point. We come in, tired or whatever. So I think a lot of the success of organizations, and companies are organizations, is this click that people have. So I think the working together and enabling people to work together, to think together, and be a bit silly together, I think is a very compelling thing to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies do so socially, and people embrace that well. Some companies kind of try to do it also in the line of action, and now
Yeah.
the post-pandemic makes it a little bit of a tougher conversation.
Sure.
I would say that, and be prepared to, yeah, it is a tough job, because there's lots of moving parts that you don't know until you try them, and even after you try them, you keep finding new things, challenges to do with people, with processes that you're not built for scale. Because right now we're 100 and something people, right? We started with
Yeah.
4
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can imagine that the structure that you thought that you had in place to start, and the structure you need to
Yeah.
give meaningful work to 100 something people has to be different.
Yes.
And you're gonna make, and we made, and we're gonna make lots of mistakes in
Yes.
testing this, and
Yeah.
realizing maybe this person is not heard, because it used to be like you were in the room, it would say everyone was in the
Yeah.
group, and now that's not the case. Yeah, so that's a little bit the challenge that you have to think about when you're going to something like this. But you need to be, yeah, mindful and entrepreneur about this, and resilient. That's the word I would
Yeah.
say. You have to be resilient.
And I guess it's how you kind of learn from those mistakes as well, and how you go forward, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, just take it in your stride. Realize that you make mistakes, as everyone does.
Yeah.
Bill
Yeah.
Gates made mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone, Elon Musk makes mistakes.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you? And it
Yeah.
is learning from those mistakes and being humble and sort of say, well, that didn't go well, and learn something. Seek support of people who do something better than you do, and
Mm.
and really try to together make things happen. And again, it
Yeah.
feeds back to the conversations and having a relationship with the people that you work, so it's all meaningful and they are there for you when you're not at your best.
Yeah. And in regards to obviously being, on the services side of things, and you're an OutSystems partner, you work closely with them. What kind of challenges have you faced, in that side of things?
Um, yeah, I mean, just the normal stuff. Do you want to be a little bit more specific so I can
So,
give it?
for example, you're obviously, you're a partner. There's other partners. There's OutSystems services as well. So there's a lot of people offering what you're
Yes,
offering, right?
correct.
So there are companies more established than you, or not as established as you. So you're in a busy market,
Yes, correct. Yeah, yeah.
and you're also competing with the actual technology itself.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
how has that challenge been for you guys as
Oh,
a business?
yeah. That's such a blanket question that we just probably need 4 hours to. Yeah, you need to break it down, and some stuff
Yeah.
you're able to address it, and you try
Mm,
to address it to the best of your knowledge. Some
mm,
some stuff you just kind of own that you're not going to address, and maybe another partner is the best person to take that particular client,
mm.
maybe because they move in a vertical that you don't
Yeah,
big opinion
sure.
on, or a big track record. Some of the stuff moving towards technology, some of the stuff you are limited to the technology
Mm,
you're using. And then what you do is you can bother OutSystems to sort of try to include it in the roadmap. And
yeah,
sometimes they listen to you, sometimes they don't, because there's conflicting. Also, they have conflicting requests on the stuff
sure.
that they're asked to do, and they also need to make sure that they don't come up with this seven-headed monster
Yeah,
taking everyone's requests. So yeah, I think you just need, it is a very specific, context specific case. And
mm,
sometimes you just need to endure it and go after it if you feel like you really can make a difference there. Sometimes you need to kind of just park it and throw the towel on that particular thing and pick
yeah,
your fight.
yeah, sure. Okay, cool. And obviously we were together in Denver.
Mhm,
So prior to that, and obviously, you've been involved with the platform for so long.
mhm.
Um, you know, in prior to kind of what's coming out, what were some things whilst you were working for OutSystems, when you moved on, whilst you've been a product league, were some releases that you really thought kind of were game changing releases. You know, a lot of people mention things like mobile and reactive and things like that. So I'm keen to kind of hear, you know, some that you may have been involved in, some that were kind of done after you moved on that you really thought, yeah.
No, I think indeed the reactive and the mobile were like a big game changer, and then I think the philosophy of OutSystems for a period was a lot more like going towards the what they call, you know, the citizen developers, and you could see that some releases gravitated around that, you know, making it simple for non-developers. I particularly don't think that's the best strategy for OutSystems, because all low-code platforms don't come equal, right? And I think there's some low-code platforms which are really lower code than OutSystems, which I jokingly say is kind of a higher low-code platform.
Yeah, okay.
And I think you should embrace your strengths, and maybe other platforms, you know, do the simplification for people who are not developers. I see OutSystems' strength to play on to be played on the developers, like the professional developers that, however, want to be more efficient. And I'm sure other people in the podcast have shared the same opinion, because I think it's quite apparent. And I think a lot of the times the OutSystems needs to be reminded a little bit of this as well, as big as and informed as they are. They are. I think obviously ODC, then the new generation is a very important, I would say probably the most important one, because it changes the entrails of the beast, right? They try to keep as much as possible the outside, so that the paradigm of development remains the same, and you know, people, you know, that code in the O11 generation, that they can migrate. But some stuff really needed to change, because you know, the backbone of OutSystems remained very static throughout the years. So I think that's a very compelling one. Now, obviously, there's all the rage is generative AI. You know, everywhere you open a drawer and there's, you were expecting cutlery, you know, forks and knives in the drawer, and this generative AI. And you know, in the presentation that we heard was indeed, you know, a big investment in trying to jump into what does AI look like for code. So I think it will be an interesting, I would say, next couple of years as this kind of shakes and falls into place, this whole generative AI and what it means for businesses in general.
Yeah, and obviously they announced Project Morpheus and, you know, all the other kind of releases. Even when I saw, you know, the no training needed kind of bullet point, I was quite intrigued, because obviously, you know, like you said, they've done things to focus on citizen development, and this seems to be kind of something that will go closer to that, where there's, you know, people who they're pushing more towards people who don't have that background, who can really use that. Is that your kind of feeling on that?
I think that there's several ways you can go about it. Do I believe, you know, I've stated how I feel about investing too heavily in citizen developers for OutSystems. Maybe it makes sense for Betty blocks and etc. But there's a trade-off. And then there's the philosophy of OutSystems is predicated in accelerating developers. Okay, let's still go back to professional developers. Let's work towards that. And on the demo that we saw, the presentation, we don't know what it looks like. I think we should know a little bit more. What does the workflow look like? You know, for the people who are listening to, you know, to us, you know, it's more like you type in, you know, concepts and prompts into an application that resides on the side of ODC Studio, of Service Studio, and it generates a data model. It looks to generate data model and UI interfaces. So you say like accounts, and it would say, whenever I see accounts, I hear it associated with these operations and these interfaces. This is what I'm going to generate. And the proposition, as it was posed there, is that then you can jump in and edit those things and do your magic. How this works in practice and what's the workflow and can you go back, etc., still needs to be revealed. We'll see. So that's a practicality of it. And the reaction to this, obviously, from the people in our audience and the people on the week, because it's really been 1 week or whatever afterwards, is interesting, because you get some people asking about the practicalities of the workflow, and you get the scared people of joining the bandwagon of, oh my God, generative AI is going to spell the end of civilization, jobs for all the unemployed, across the board. And that's, we would need a podcast just on that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. So I think we're living interesting times. Let's put it this way. And I think you need to, and to be a little bit of a spoiler, I think generative AI is not really going to. I think we will take it in our stride. I think it's not going to be this cataclysmic thing where you will have millions of unemployed people. I think we'll just move with the times. As in the Industrial Revolution, people were saying, "Oh, this is going to end up, lose. Everyone will be on the dole, or et cetera, et cetera." And then what happened is just like new jobs. Imagination from humans is infinite. So once we figured out how to do this particular thing that used to be super manual, and now it isn't, we'll find out other things to ask people to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think, and here is, when you're an IT company, I think this is a little bit the flexibility that you need to set yourself up to have. So if you are just an OutSystems developer that does so by dragging and dropping, spheres that are there, then you all of a sudden you go like, if they take away the spheres, I've got nothing left. If you have a higher call, then you can play around with that.
Make yourself relevant at all times, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But and shift and be mindful and be, have the wonderment to sort of say, what's the next step of my industry look like? And this probably means I'll need to dig up a book and learn something new, but that's what you should be doing anyway.
Of course. And there's articles all the time, will AI replace low code? Will AI, we're in obviously recruitment, and loads of things I see on LinkedIn is it's going to replace recruiters and they won't be needed anymore. But I definitely agree with you on the point that I think it's about, skilling yourself in a way to make yourself always kind of in front of that in some way, that even though all these things are coming out, you are always required.
And make no mistake, all the things that you put in your toolbox as you progress through the years, they will serve you right later on, because they give you a baggage of knowledge, and having seen it somewhere at some point in some other guise that you can then use there. So I think it is a little bit, if you look to learn the first principles of problems, if you look to instruct yourself on how to think and unpack problems in general, you will find that you're very malleable to the challenges, and you can find what is your sweet spot on your day-to-day job progressively over the years.
It's good to know. And one question I had for you was, obviously going back to your experience, where you've been a product engineer for a long time. Obviously now you're kind of more on the managerial side of things, and any preference, any kind of, I see you mentioned, you're an engineer at heart. That's your thing. Is there kind of, do you kind of feel like, okay, you've done that, and like you said, people grow with age, things move and different kind of things, but is there a sense of you that kind of misses that side of things and getting involved in those side of things?
That is always the case a little bit, there's always the first love thing, right? So that's something that you need to go to, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a either or. I mean, if you're occupying the right position and you're comfortable in your shoes, you can have it a little bit. Yes, of course, I cannot be with my head in the code, otherwise I'm not doing the other stuff. But I still hang out with the cool cats that are
cool.
And I by osmosis, I try that some of it still rubs off on me, and I can still throw in an idea here and there. So I think it is more like combining those things and maybe using the tools that you put away over the years to make suggestions at a bit of a higher level, and then let the people who you were a few years back, you know, actually be super industrious and really fixing the big problem, right? And then these people will move on, and later on will be doing what you're now doing, and
of course.
and this is why I don't worry too much about the future. There's always going to be this ebb and flow of of what you're doing, and there's always going to be people who are ramping up and collecting the first tools in their tool set.
Sure.
The person who has lots of tools, they're kind of rusty, but they're there. It is embracing a little bit that.
Interesting. And you know, someone who kind of, this is a question I like to ask everybody, someone like yourself who's been around with OutSystems from the get-go, really. We ask, like, you know, what would be your message to kind of developers or people in general who are against low code, don't, you know, kind of, you know, maybe there's people you've had conversations with before who've kind of been against it. What would be your kind of message to those kind of people?
I think it is, as the British say, horses for courses. Probably here we just lost half of the world. So I think it is, as I said, you know, you need to establish, you know, use the right tool for the right job. And what low code does is it moves a little bit the discussion to a slightly high, even if you're a developer, to a slightly higher level for most of your day. You still need the same kind of thought process to solve the bigger things, and you know, bits of it are solved for you by automation. And that's, if you're in high code, it's exactly the same thing. You know, there's lots of automation tools, and generative AI is going to help, you know, write snippets. So it is, I think actually generative AI will show to the naysayers that it is all good, you know, and this is all accelerators towards a purpose, right? So I think this might actually bring about the realization to, I understand this is a shorthand of doing what we've been doing all along, which is implementing software. And I think it will actually make the discussion for low code easier in the hearts of IT managers and so on.
That's a great answer. It's very different.
But you know, take it from me. I coded in assembly. There's still stuff that's best coded in assembly. I believe, and this is what you should. Those things you should code in assembly.
And just a final question for you. You know, personally, obviously, for your company, you know, what's, you know, any kind of future goals you or your company kind of have, as you know, you're based Netherlands, Portugal. You know, what other officers or any kind of things that we can expect, you know, in the future?
Well, obviously, I think it's all a little bit, it needs to be all a little bit moved by this idea that, you know, constant change, especially when you're working with very intelligent people, you need to embrace that. Otherwise, they get bored and they move on. So what we try to do at Product League is, you know, balance, you know, the practicalities of having a business that needs to exist to pay for salaries, but also blending in opportunities that will open things up in the future. And this probably means, you know, discovering technologies and adding technologies to the mix. It's improving your processes so you're more efficient. So you use what is the best things. I mean, we've been using Agile for, I don't know, 23 years or whatever. You know, there's all sorts of, you know, other scaled Agile frameworks, and people will argue until the cows come home if they're good or bad. So that's more like, but sometimes, you know, I can be a little bit too romanticized about this. I look at it like, okay, you know, come up with interesting stuff, and the rest will kind of follow. The right people will gravitate around you, and you'll build interesting things. In regards of geography, because you sort of said it there, I think, you know, what moved me to the Netherlands was the idea that, you know, something here was very exciting and had more possibilities. You know, we were in the US, we saw like a lot of springing up in the, well, actually not just the US, but actually in all of the Americas. There's a lot of stuff happening in Asia Pacific as well. Also, well, closer to home, the Nordics. There's stuff. So I think we will follow things to their attractiveness. Let's put it this way.
Sure.
So if if there's a vibrant thing that's happening, I don't know, at some point in Sweden, then let's do it. If it's happening in Africa, then I think we should do it and go for Africa and solve the problems of businesses there. So I don't have like this huge kind of preset plan, but I go more towards this. Okay, where are the needs? What do they look like? Where do we need to be, both geographically and knowledge-wise, to address this? So we'll see. Let's have another one in 5 years.
Yeah,
time.
definitely.
And hopefully I still have some hair.
Hopefully we can do it in person. I think it'd be good to do
we
it
can
in
do
person.
it in person as well. I
Sounds
fly out to the UK, or you fly out, or we fly out to wherever we are at the time.
Exactly.
We're citizens of the world, right?
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, Miguel. It was really great to talk to you.
No, this was super awesome for us.
Yeah, really interesting.
I really am sorry we left it so long.
No, and I'm actually glad we left it so long, because like I think I may have like tried to speak to you when we first started, and if I think from there, that was so long ago to now, and we've met in person since.
Maybe you have better questions and I have better answers now.
Maybe
whoever's listening is getting a better deal.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. So I think definitely, that sometimes they say everything has its time, and I think this was the perfect time for sure.
Yeah, it is indeed the perfect time.
Really appreciate your time,
Miguel. Thank you so much for having me. Best of luck for iTrack and all of the avenues that you guys are doing, and expanding to other low code as well, and fighting the good fight to have the right people, the right clients solving the problems. So you're brothers in arms.
Appreciate it.
Let's make this happen.
Yes, definitely. All the best. Thanks, Miguel.
Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.